What up? So, I want to talk about this camera and why I think more people need to buy it instead of just looking at the latest and greatest stuff that's out there. So, let's talk about it. This is Canon's original 5D. And I've had it for I don't know how many months now. And I'll tell you right now, I don't care if I owned a 1D X or S or whatever the hell, Canon's gigantic full frame kick-ass cameras are with, 11 frames per second shooting and blah, blah, blah. I'll never sell this. I don't care if I own a 5D Mark III. I'm never going to sell this body. I hold this in the same regard as my T70. And let me grab it. Oh, don't fall. All right, look. This is a Canon T70. This camera was built, in fact, this one was built in 1983 or 1984. All right, this is, in my opinion, one of Canon's best film FD mount SLRs. My opinion. It's not like I've used every single one Canon has ever released, but wow. This camera is a breeze to use. I even have the command back on it. And I think I was given this camera in 1991. I think maybe 1990 is when it was given to me. And I have used it off and on since then. And this camera has never broken, never had an issue. I mean, never. Never had a problem. And I'm never going to sell it. Never. And that's how I feel about the 5D. People talk about, I want the newest bells and whistles and blah, 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 blah. Well, what are you using the camera for? Are you taking pictures with it? Okay, then what's with all the bells and whistles? And when I say bells and whistles, I mean, let's talk about what the 5D Mark II and the Mark III and the 6D have over this. They have a bigger screen on the back. Okay? They have live view. Okay? They have more frames per second. This thing is like 3. They have higher megapixels. Oh my God, let's talk about megapixels. Listen, if I think I really can't talk about megapixels in this video because I think it's one of the most absurd things ever. I've taken pictures with my XT. Oh, I think it's actually over there. With my Digital Rebel XT that's like 8 megapixels. And I've gotten some amazing photos with it. So, I guess you can talk about megapixels, but unless you're blowing up something the size of one of your walls in your house, I think that 12 megapixels is probably good. I'm just going to throw that out there. 12 megapixels is good for a decent poster size photo printed out. And if you don't think so, then that's a whole other video. But yeah, so I see a lot of people that are just all about buying brand new. And I don't get it. And I guess I want to try and dissuade you from only buying new. Because really, if you only buy new, you are missing out on some killer cameras at some killer prices. Why go out and buy a brand new T5i when the T2i and the T3i are pretty much the same exact camera? Why go out and buy a 5D Mark III if you're never going to push it to its max ISO and you're never going to take videos with it? You get what I'm saying? You need to look at what you're using the camera for and then determine what you need. And the cool thing about buying used is that you kind of don't have to make a compromise. I want to do portraiture style, but I also want to do wildlife and, take some pictures of my kid playing soccer. So I need something that has a higher, frames per second and this and that, the other. Well, the cool thing is when you buy used, you can get two different bodies that will make up what you need, if that makes sense. For me, I would never shoot kids playing, and I might, but it's never going to be fast. It's like 3 frames per second, 2 or 3 frames per second. So I'm going to miss a bunch of shots with it, right? But for portraiture, when you look at a 5D Mark III image compared to this, side by side on a computer screen, you're not going to be able to tell the difference. Unless you're going to say, well, at ISO 3200, the 5D Mark III is better. Okay, yeah, it's a newer sensor. Sure, the 6D will have better ISO performance. Okay, sure. But when the hell am I going to shoot at ISO 3200 and think that that's a good idea? I don't shoot weddings, so I just want to throw that out there. So for all you wedding photographers that need 3200 and 6400, okay, I get it. But you're probably not going to think about buying a 5D, an original anyway, right? So getting back to, you can have two cameras for the same price. I paid $500 for this, and it's perfect, in perfect working order. And I have my 60D right here that I didn't buy a 70D because I'm not going to shoot video, even though this does video. I don't use it for video, so this 60D is pretty good frames per second, kind of, depending on what you're shooting. But I have two bodies that I spent less than, well, I might have spent $1,000 or $1,100 total because I can't remember. I think I might have paid $600 for this 60D. Just the body. So for the price of a 5D Mark II, right now, I have a 5D and a 60D. One with the crop sensor, so when I put a zoom lens on there, it's going even further. It's a little bit faster, frames per second. It's got a nice flippy screen that rotates. It's got auto ISO, but no dedicated white balance button. I always get back to that on that camera. So that's the fallbacks of this. Not having auto ISO. Well, if you're just doing portraiture, why would you ever be using auto ISO? Right? It only has, the 9 focus points. Who gives a shit? Guess how many focus points this thing has? Really, I say it has 1, even though it's a manual focusing camera. But I'll tell you, this body has probably one of the best manual focus, whatever you call it, in the center that I've seen. How it works, it's pretty damn good. So for a guy like me who's old enough to remember manual film cameras and actually using them a lot, 9 focus points, autofocus. Wow, I rarely use them. Imagine that. I stick to the center focus point and I recompose. I mean, most of the time, yes. If I have a tripod, especially, and I'm getting a shot of a person posing or something that's not moving, I will move my focus point. But it's rare. So $500, and the images on this are amazing. They remind me of my T70. When you nail a picture on this T70 35 millimeter film, when you nail it, there's just it's stunning. It'll blow you away. It's the same with this, especially if you're only used to using crop sensor bodies. You know, you need to think about what you're going to be using the camera for, and just base it off of that. You don't need to base it off of all the bells and whistles and, it doesn't do video. It doesn't have auto-focusing in video mode. It doesn't have 1 million ISO. It doesn't do 10 frames a second. I'd love to have a 7D Mark II. I would. And then I'd get rid of my 60D. But it's a lot of money. Even at $1,800, it's a lot of money for me, because what does that 7D Mark II do that my 60D can't? 10 frames a second. That's it, in my opinion, because again, that high ISO capability, I'm not using it. I'm not really using it. So it's the only thing that will do over what I already have. And it won't take better portrait pictures than this 5D. It just won't. So just remember that there are tons of cameras on the market. You don't need a brand new T5i when you can go buy a used T3i on the cheap. That's going to be basically the same camera. You don't need to go buy that Nikon because it has 36 megapixels, because really, how many of those are you using? Why do you need that many? It doesn't make your picture on your screen better. It doesn't make that 5x7 print a better picture. It just doesn't. So shop around and don't be afraid of buying used. Just make sure you do all the checks you need to do before you pay for it. So just my thoughts on the 5D. It's like a lost camera. Nobody even thinks about it anymore. Oh, it's the battle between the 5D Mark II and the 5D Mark III. Well, the 5D Mark III, or the 6D, is weather sealed. That's why I want to go with the 6 weather sealed. This ain't weather sealed. Again, 1984. Still going strong. I've never shot photos in a torrential downpour or a typhoon. Maybe you do, and you need it to be weather sealed. Maybe you need that magnesium alloy body because you're going to drop it off of a tall building. But here's the cool thing about this. It's not weather sealed, right? But if it gets fucked up, I could probably fix it. And if fixing it's too expensive, I can just go buy another one. And even at buying 2 of these, it's still going to be cheaper than buying the weather sealed brand new version, or whatever the best one is in the market at the time. Just my thoughts. Peace.